the author of Alien Contact, The Difficult Truth. We've got a lot to talk about tonight. And Derek, thank you very much for being here with us. I know very courageous to say some of the things you're going to tell us tonight. Before we move on, I want to try to cover as much as we possibly can, but also get as deep as we possibly can with this. One of the things that I read in your book that I had no idea of is that there's many different types of close encounters. Can you name the different close encounters that there are?
Yeah, there's a list which I believe it includes 7 different types of encounters. From lights in the sky is one type. An encounter where you see an alien being either in a craft or emerge from a craft is another type.
That's the close encounters of the fourth kind, right?
Yes, there's a type where the spacecraft leaves some type of physical trace, such as burn marks around landing gear, something like that. That's I think a close encounter of the second kind. There's a type where contact between an alien and yourself is part of the experience, and there's a type where you are taken or invited aboard an alien spacecraft, and there's also a type where it goes up to close encounters of the seventh kind, but there's a type where you see either a human or an animal killed during the course of an alien encounter. And unfortunately, I've experienced that one as well.
Is that the sixth or the seventh one?
I have to look at the list. I can't keep it straight.
Okay. I was relying on you there.
I can look it up for you if you'd like. I can look that up.
That's fine. But the seventh one.
We'll look it up.
But the seventh one was pretty strong.
Oh yeah, it's really quite a handy list. The sixth kind is a contact event which results in the death of an animal or a human. The seventh kind is close encounter of the seventh kind results in the creation of a human-alien hybrid.
And that's what we've heard that happens in some of these alien-type bases that we hear about.
Very commonly reported among abductees. As I said, I've interviewed many thousands of them. I stopped counting at 2,000 back in the late 90s. But one thing that you find if you interview a lot of abductees is you hear the same story basically over and over again from people who have no relationship to each other. I've heard the same story hundreds and hundreds of times. And it almost always involves eventually the creation of a hybrid. And they seem to have been doing this. It's not a new program. They seem to have been doing this for many thousands of years here. And this is not my opinion. This is what I was told by my military contacts. Alien medical science, which is far advanced over our own science, has shown that DNA has a built-in time bomb. And it's impossible to say just how long the timer is set on that, but when the time expires, it becomes progressively more and more difficult to reproduce naturally. The DNA has essentially become worn out, and eventually it will become impossible to reproduce naturally, and intelligent races then will have to turn to cloning. Cloning is not a 100% efficient process. Every generation of clones, you lose a little bit of information from the previous generation. So as time passes, these clones become less and less efficient. Their lifespan becomes shorter and shorter. And there comes a point in time where eventually you will not even be able to reproduce anymore by cloning. And when this happens, the race will become extinct. The only way to stop that from happening is if they can find another intelligent race to hybridize themselves with and figure out how to do it successfully. Now, the alien races that we're aware of, many of them are going to be facing this cutoff point within the next 20,000 years or so, is what I was told. And they don't want to become extinct. They know that it's going to happen. And humans are the newest known intelligent race. We're also by far the least intelligent, most primitive of all the known intelligent races. But our DNA is in very good shape compared to most of theirs. It's young, it's it's strong, it's very versatile, and what they are hoping to do is to create hybrids between humanity and themselves as a way to send part of their race through to the future, which would otherwise be impossible. And right now, apparently what's happening around here is that we are the center of a battlefield because many of these alien races want to do this and to use humans to hybridize with, and they're basically fighting over who's going to get to do it. Now,
so we're like the basic DNA. We're like the 101. We're it.
We're the most simplified DNA, apparently, that intelligent life can take. I'm told that their DNA is very much more complex than ours, but ours it's an advantage to us that it's a simple type of DNA because it makes it easier for them to genetically engineer into hybrids, and it makes us more valuable to them. Otherwise, they wouldn't really have any reason to keep us around. And the reptilians, well, the Greys and the reptilians are primarily the ones that you hear about creating hybrids. And the question that people don't really ask, but I think they should be asking, is what's being done with these hybrids that they create? And many of them, the answer is many of them are being released back into our population. Many of them don't even realize that they are hybrids. And they are working beside us, they're living beside us, and they are interbreeding with us. And all you need is enough hybrids and enough patience, and eventually you will succeed in changing the entire genetic character of humanity just through the act of breeding with genetic hybrids. It's a way to conquer a world without firing a shot if you have enough patience.
Right, and you don't believe that they know that they're hybrids? It's just...
Well, there's not really necessarily any reason that they would know, because they can come and take abductees and impregnate them during the abduction experience, and those abductees, most people that are abducted will never realize that they've been abducted at all, because they usually will erase the memory. And so many of these people are just being raised as a normal human child, and they have no way of knowing.
I know you have some favorite, who are some of your favorite UFO alien people that you look up to, that you enjoy their work, and who is it that you try to stay away from?
Well, I have a lot of respect for Bob Dean. I have a lot of respect for Dr. David Jacobs. I have a lot of respect for Wendell Stevens, and of course William Cooper, who's probably the granddaddy of all whistleblowers. I think that he's probably the most important whistleblower who's ever walked the face of the earth. Dr. Carla Turner, for her. James Bartley is a friend of mine. Paul Sinclair of the UK. I think that those are all really good people, and you can learn a lot by reading their published works and by listening to their either YouTube clips or their lectures. Some of the people that I try to avoid, well, that's kind of touchy, I suppose, but I personally can't tolerate Whitley Strieber. I don't think he's an abductee. The stories that he tells has absolutely nothing in common with any abductee I've ever spoken to. I don't believe that he's speaking the truth. I don't trust him as far as I can throw him. I don't care at all for Dr. Stephen Greer, although I know he has a lot of fans. He is spreading the word that all aliens are here to be our friend and assist us. It's just not true, and you don't have to be around alien contact long to understand clearly that it's not the truth. He's too intelligent to actually believe that. I think that he is a paid disinformation agent at best, and I don't trust anything that he says. And he's been accused of being a human who is controlled by reptilians, or who has actually, reptilians are supposedly able to shapeshift into human form, and he's been accused of that, and I wouldn't doubt it, because the things that he says, all the people on my block don't want to be my friend and assist me. Don't tell me all the citizens of the galaxy do. When people are being abducted from their homes at 3 a.m, that's a capital crime under our laws. It's not the act of a friend. Friends don't abduct you. They don't perform surgeries on you. They don't impregnate you. And they don't, there's at least 3 kinds of aliens, and probably more, which are known to utilize humans as a food source. The Greys do it. The type 1 and 2 Greys both do it. The reptilians do it. And would you like me to tell you a little bit about that? It's kind of horrific. But
No, absolutely. In fact, I'd like to, first of all, what's the difference between a Grey 1 and 2?
Well, one type of Grey is a naturally occurring race. It's the type that was involved in the Roswell incident.
The one that we always see, that face that we're so used to seeing when we think of an alien.
No.
No.
It's like if you go online, you can look up Skinny Bob, and you'll be led to a film clip which shows one of the Greys that was involved in the Roswell thing that were captured by Russia. It was smuggled out of the Soviet Union when the Soviet Union fell apart. But it seems to be a legitimate clip, and it's different than the one. The classic ET is what I would call the Type 2 Grey. Those are a genetically engineered life form. They're a creation of the reptilians. They were, according to the information I have, that they were created thousands of years ago as an experiment in creating artificial life. And they're incapable of reproducing on their own. They have to be cloned. The reptilians considered them to be a failure, so they relegated them to slavery. And they are now used to do the reptilians' dirty work, such as abducting people.
Right, and those are the ones that are that typical look that we're used to, that everybody sees when you think of a UFO. That's the Type 2. Right, I hear they are the worker bees of the universe.
Yeah. They're the ones with the big, dark, almond-shaped eyes, and they are 100% telepathic. They do not have a digestive system as we do. They don't have a esophagus. They don't have a stomach. They don't have any of that digestive equipment that we have. So because of that, they have to intake and excrete their nutrients in the form of a liquid slurry that they smear on their skin and absorb through their pores and excrete through their pores. And this slurry is composed of hydrogen peroxide, human or bovine blood, and some other enzymes that they can get from our various organs, and they mix it all together, and then they absorb it through their skin. And I'm sure you remember all the livestock mutilations from the 70s that were nationwide. And the reason that those were occurring was that was a source of blood for the Greys and organs for the Greys to use for this nutrient slurry that they require. And as you recall, the bodies of these animals were found completely drained of every last drop of blood, and they had many of their organs were surgically cored out. Scientists at Lawrence Livermore Labs in the 1980s, the early 1980s, discovered a way to synthesize human blood in large quantities. When they did, the livestock mutilations basically stopped happening, and because this human blood that they were synthesizing was being turned over to the Greys for this purpose. And by the way, it was not just animals that were being mutilated. They found humans that were in the same condition. They've apparently been snatched from they can snatch them from their cars while they're driving, and they had their organs were cored out, their bodies were drained of blood, and according to the condition of the bodies, it was clear that this was done while they were both alive and conscious.
And when you get your information, no, that's fine. When you get your information, I know I want to let you talk, but I want to get in there too on some of these questions here because I want to take it a little deeper with you. Who gives you this information? How do you know these things that you're saying?
Well, I can't give you the names of my sources. The agreement that I have with them was that they would give me information, but I can't say who it was. And
I understand.
People are free to not believe that David exists if they like because of that, but I won't break my word to them because it would put people in danger that don't deserve it.
Sure.
I'd rather have people not believe me than break my word to those people. But
you're saying that everybody but you're saying that all the information you have and you say and you state is backed by something or some source or something you found along the way. It's not just your theory.
Right. I don't have any theories of my own. This is information that came from the information about the Greys and the reptilians, for instance. It came from someone who let's just say has a general's stars on his collar. He's worked in Black Ops all of his professional career, he has personally met Greys and reptilians and other races that I don't know of. But through the course of his duties, it was part of his job to meet with them occasionally. And so much of this information comes with him. I've also got friends who work in back engineering the technology which is recovered from crashes, and it's luck that some people get hit by lightning when they're playing golf. Some people get good connections. It's a ufologist's dream to have the connections that I got. They landed in my lap. I wasn't looking for them. It was just a matter of extraordinary good luck that I happened to become acquainted with these people, and it changed my life in many ways because they had access to information that I would never otherwise have. And before I say something and present it as the truth, I always vet it and back it up with multiple sources. So I'm not really guessing about this stuff, and I'm not trying to speculate. I don't like to speculate because I don't want to be responsible for spreading information that turns out to not be true later.
No, and that's what I want to know, and that's what I want the listeners to hear, is that you are not doing this by theory. You actually have sources, whether you can tell us or not. That's what you are stating to us. Derek Tyler, he is the author of Alien Contact, The Difficult Truth, has interviewed thousands and thousands of abductees and also some folks behind the scenes that are way up in some security levels and know a lot of information. He will not reveal his sources. However, that's how he's giving us a lot of his information. Derek, I looked up Skinny Bob, and I know exactly who you're talking about. I didn't realize he was called Skinny Bob. But that actual video is very disturbing to watch. So what variety of ET is that one? And please, if you can, get back to the variety of species and what they are, how they are different from each other.
That is the type of ET which was involved in the Roswell event.
Skinny Bob, okay.
Yes.
Which is a gray too?
Well, I call them type 1 grays. They're
type 1.
The type 2 grays are the artificially engineered, the ones with the big dark, I guess they're actually an eye covering, but they look like big almond-shaped black eyes.
Right.
Those are a different type of gray. They are an artificially created race, not a naturally occurring race. And I was going to say, I'd like to get back, if you don't mind, just for a second. There was a couple more things I wanted to say. You were asking about who to trust and who not to trust. I often say if you want to find the truth about alien contact, follow the trail of dead bodies, and it will lead you to the truth. There are some people, such as Corey Goode is an example, they're simply not credible. He talks about a race of blue avians coming here to save us. There's no credible insider or whistleblower ever who has mentioned such a race of aliens. I don't even believe they exist. And there's a guy named David Wilcock who has given him a tremendous amount of publicity. He's an author and a radio host, and I think he's either an unbelievable dupe or a con artist, because there's simply nothing that makes me put any credibility into anything Corey Goode says. I think that he's just someone who's trying to cash in, and I don't put any stock in what they say. You've got to have some form of credibility and some form of backup. You can't just make things up. They think that skeptics hate frauds. It's not true. Skeptics love frauds. Frauds are what give them a job. People like me detest frauds because they make everything we do far more difficult than it has to be. They make it hard for us to get exposure. They make it hard for us to get credibility. We all get painted with the same brush, and there's no one who hates frauds worse than legitimate witnesses and contactees. I had a friend who interviewed Corey Goode once, and one of his claims is that when he was 8 years old, he was Vladimir Putin's handler of some kind. My friend said, I don't know much about aliens, but I know about Putin, and you better hope he never finds out you said that about him, or you're going to end up sliced and diced one of these days. So,
yikes. Well, let's go back to what you know as opposed to what the other ones do or do not know, because I want to get to your good, juicy stuff, Sure. And you say that let's just stick with your sources before we go back to the variations of the ETs. Let's just stick with your sources. You have talked to some pretty incredible people, and that's where you've gotten all this information. So
it's one place. I've also done a tremendous amount of research.
Right. Well, let's talk before we get back to the variations, and let's make sure we do that, but let's talk about the Colonel in your book. The Colonel was probably, one of the most incredible. Every one of those chapters were incredible, but that was pretty amazing to read the chapter on the Colonel. Can you tell the listeners out there who the Colonel is, what you want to say, and what the Colonel told you?
Well, I gave the full transcript of a couple of conversations I had with him is in the book, word for word. I only identify him in the book as the Colonel, and he is someone who has a rank of at least Colonel in the American military. He has spent most all of his career in the special ops, the black ops they call them. He is of sufficient rank and sufficient security clearance that, in his words, as soon as I step onto one of those secret underground bases, I became the highest-ranking officer and the person with the highest security clearance. He said, they don't tell me who can come on those bases, I tell them. So that's a pretty impressive set of credentials. He's got clearance to see things that most of us could only dream of, certainly that I could only dream of seeing, including the Greada Treaty.
Well, he had said at one point to you that he kind of like invited you to see some stuff one day. Did you ever get a chance to do that?
Well, the condition of the invitation was what he said was he had wanted for years to take a civilian researcher into one of our secret underground bases. As I'm sure you've heard, we have a network of underground cities and bases, fully built cities, connected by roads and by magnetic levitation subways, and it spans the entire length and breadth of this country. They're an average of 5 to 7 miles underground, and they are fully stocked, fully equipped cities, military bases, and these subways are so advanced that the only city in the world which uses them, I think, is Tokyo. We certainly don't have them in our civilian infrastructure because they're too expensive, but the military has them underground. The condition that he attached to this invitation was that if he took me there, it would be just like I'd never been there. I couldn't talk about it. So I won't say that I've been underground, but I'll say that those cities exist. Everything you've heard about them is probably correct. They are fully stocked with food. They've got huge hydroponic bays capable of producing enough food, and they're hooked into underground springs. They've got air and water recycling systems. They've got huge warehouses filled with ammunition and weapons. They've got tanks. They've got artillery. They've even got underground waterways where they have actual ships based inside under the miles underground, and they can basically survive under there for hundreds of years if they need to without ever coming up. We've paid for all of this, and these facilities are protected by multiple 25-ton blast doors, the same kind of doors they use at NORAD headquarters in Cheyenne Mountain. They're capable of withstanding anything short of a direct nuclear hit, and they're backed up by not just one door; they've got 2 or 3 doors in a row. This has been done at a cost of over $12 trillion. It's almost enough to repay our entire national debt. So somebody is clearly expecting trouble. They're clearly expecting the surface world to become uninhabitable at some point, and they have absolutely no intention of allowing us into these facilities. And they've got plenty of weapons there to keep us out if we try to get in.
When you say, going back again here, so he said that he would show you this on conditions, and your conditions would be to never say anything. So actually, you could have seen it or not seen it from what you're telling us.
Well, when people get sent to Congress to testify and they don't want to admit what they've done, they say, I can't recollect. I do not recollect any such activities, right?
Okay.
So that's kind of what I'm required to say. I don't recollect any such activities.
Excellent.
If you want to know what's in there, I can probably tell you.
Okay, that's excellent. Okay, cool. All right. So the Colonel also said that abductions are only done by humans.
That's what he said. I think that it's clearly not exactly correct, because we know that aliens do carry out abductions, but many more abductions than people realize are done by the military. I think it's a far higher percentage than people would ever guess. And according to the colonel, the military has various methods of making it appear that it's actually aliens that are abducting you when it's really the military. And they do that, for one thing, so that they can never get caught and held responsible for it, and for another thing, that the memory erasure process is not perfect. Sometimes people are able to retain memories of these abduction experiences, as you know. And if you think that it was aliens that took you and you start talking about it, people will stop paying attention to you and think you're crazy. So again,
yes.
The military, it's a way for them to protect themselves. But they have access to alien technology. They can take you out of your home the same way that the aliens do. They can return you back to your home. It'll be just like you were never gone. And they can abduct the president as easily as they can abduct you or I, because the technology allows them to do it and not to be caught. And they can return you to your home at the same time that you were originally taken. So it's just like no time has passed. Someone sleeping beside you would think you never left the bed, and you have no way to prove anything. It's very nefarious and very subtle the way that they are able to do this. And that's another reason that I've chosen to speak out, because somebody has to step up and tell it how it is, or they'll get away with this forever. And these members of the military are working in league and hand in hand and side by side with the reptilian and the gray consortium of ETs.
And this information's been coming to you from the Colonel and your other resources. So you're saying that, because we've all heard David Jacobs here, and we've all heard a lot of abductions here on Coast to Coast, and a lot of the things that you're talking about. So we're hearing now from you that the ETs, what we believe the ETs to be doing, going through actual doors and windows and pulling abductees through doors and windows and taking them onto a craft, and also having them forget things, and even going as far as time travel, that our own human, because we're talking our military, so humans can do these same things.
Well, some people can if they have access to the technology.
But humans can. But humans can. It's not beyond us. Okay.
I've seen someone, I don't know what rank he was, but during one abduction event, many people were taken, not just me. And I've seen one of our military officers, whoever was in charge of this group, literally step through a closed and locked door into someone's apartment. He stepped up to the door, and I've heard, I don't know if this is true, I've heard that it's a device that attaches to the belt that allows them to do this. But he stepped up to the door, and it looked just like a flash bulb went off all around his body, just a bright flash of light, and then he was through the door. And he came out a minute later, holding by the hand there was an old couple, an elderly couple that lived apparently in this apartment. He was leading each one by the hand, opened the door, and let them out and back to the craft. And it was amazing, but I can tell you it's totally within our capabilities to do that. Yes.
Are you able to, with your sources, do you still have them to where you can ask them how that technology works?
Probably not. Well, one of my sources was unfortunately terminated, so that didn't help things any. And it's part of the deal, as it was explained to me by the colonel himself. It's part of the deal of getting access to these programs and this technology, is that before you're given such access, you have to basically be willing to buy your own bullet. And if you're not, they won't let you into the program. And they tell you before you're given access to these programs that there's going to come a day when it's determined that your services are no longer needed. And when that day comes, you'll either be set up in business at the military's expense, meaning at public expense, but at the military's expense, and given a nice little retirement plan, or you'll be taken out back and shot in the head. And if you don't agree to that term, they'll allow you to walk away, but you'll never have another chance to work with alien technology. And
do
so
you get a choice?
You have to agree with it going in. Yeah.
Do you get a choice of being shot or working there? I mean,
no. You don't get a choice. They choose. You don't know which it's going to be, but you have to accept that that's a possibility. That's one of those two things is going to happen if you get into these black programs where you have this kind of access to this kind of technology and security clearances. They'll determine later whether they want to give you a retirement plan or just take you out, whichever is more convenient to the military is what they'll do.
Huh. So, okay, just to keep the promise that we said we would, if you can describe the different varieties of ETs, and we just have about 3 minutes before we go into break. So, can you tell me about the different types of ETs?
I don't know about all of them.
The ones that you know of.
There's reportedly up to as many as 160 some races that they know of. There's at least 60 plus. The Draco reptilians look almost precisely what we envision Satan to look like. They're 7 to 9 feet tall. They have horns. They have vestigial wings, tails. They look just like the devil, and that's surely where many of our stories of the devil have come from in throughout history. They've probably been misidentified as being supernatural creatures, but they're really just an alien race they're very ancient. They've had technology for hundreds of millions of years, space travel technology. According to my sources, they are the most intelligent and technologically advanced race that we know of to exist. They have, I'm told, an average IQ of around 200. And
they're the bad guys.
Yeah, they're the bad guys because they don't have any sympathy for us. They see us as we see cattle. We are like a harvestable resource. They like to eat people alive. They have absolutely no. They're reptilian. They have no emotions such as compassion, sympathy, mercy, kindness, friendship. They don't have those emotions. They're about territoriality, aggression, research, and achievement, science. But they don't care at all. They don't have like sympathy or anything like that. They don't care if you hurt. They don't care if you're terrorized. They like it if you're terrorized, because when humans are terrorized, they give off lots of delicious energy through our bodily auras, and these beings can absorb it, and they seem to get a high out of eating human flesh, which has been supercharged with adrenaline. So they like to terrorize people to the maximum extent possible, and then basically they consume them alive. So that's who we signed a treaty with.
Oh my goodness, that's oof. More to come here.